Hey YouTube, welcome to another video on this awesome chess channel. Your heart brought to you today by our Ancient Aliens series, the best game in the history of World Championships. This game took place in the 1985 World Championship between Anatoly Karpov and Kasparov. Let's put this in context. This match at the time completely mobilized the chess world. People followed it on television, radio, in any way they could. The current world champion was Karpov, and he was facing a 22-year-old young man who had a meteoric rise, Kasparov. In a 24-game match, if it ended in a tie, Karpov would keep the world champion title. In other words, Kasparov would have to win this match. Just so we have an idea, Karpov at the time was considered what Magnus is today, something that seemed unbeatable, until the unbelievable Game 16 that we're going to see today, and that would change the history of world chess forever. Kasparov was playing black, and he made a plan in this game that seems completely absurd. It's important to point out that at the time of Game 16, the match was tied. I warn you to follow this game and lie down, because if you stay in your chair, you'll eventually fall. Because what happens here is a tremendous scandal. I'm warning you, hold on to the baseboards, get your popcorn ready, and let's get to it. And chess will always be now. So, folks, here we are. And with white pieces, Anatoly Karpov against Kasparov. And it's important to point out that during this match, in most of the games, Karpov played the move e4, and against all these e4s, Kasparov responded with the Sicilian. Now, here comes something surprising. Why? Did Karpov move the knight to f3? And contrary to what Kasparov had been playing, which was the move d6, he changed in game 16. Here, he played the move 16, which came as a surprise. Why do the variations with e6 lead to quieter Sicilians? It's more positional, not really Kasparov's style. And it's also not what he needed in this match, because the match was tied and he needed to win. What's coming here? Well, Karpov opened with the Sicilian, and Kasparov went into the Taimanov, which is a slightly calmer Sicilian against the Taimanov. Karpov favored moving the knight to b5 to target d6, but Kasparov countered by controlling d6. And now Karpov plays this pawn structure that controls d5, and it's a structure that Karpov really liked to play because it controls the center and at the same time gains a lot of space. They followed the theory. Kasparov played e4 and Karpov defended here. a6 is played, then knight to a3. This is a key moment in the game. Why? The Sicilian Taimanov theory has black playing bishop to e7 to develop, followed by moves like bishop to e2. I castle, my opponent castles, and I prepare to move the bishop. Both sides develop, entering a technical position. Where white has this pawn structure called Marokshi, it controls the d5 square, and black plays this pawn structure here called hedgehog, a positional structure that's very hard to break. A solid position. Now, Kasparov didn't like to play this kind of position, but Rafael Chess, if he didn't like it, why did he go into this Taimanov line then? Because he didn't intend to go into this. He has a surprising move here in this position then. A move that, in fact, seems impossible to make at this moment. Because Marox controls the structure, controls the d5 square, and Kasparov played d5 in this position. This is a surprising move. A completely unbelievable move, indeed. After the game, Kasparov commented that this was an idea and inspiration from his coach. During a train trip, his coach had the inspiration to play d5 in this position. Later, they studied this very deeply and found compensation here. For this pawn that black will sacrifice, it's an incredible idea, considering there were no engines back then. Today, it was Tuta's idea. Look here. Karpov went for this pawn gain. Kasparov played knight to b4 and now bishop to e2, bishop to c5. And after castling, black has the option to recover the pawn. Actually, the engines like this move. But Kasparov didn't take it. He played another move. Here within the concept, there's brute calculation chess and there's conceptual chess, for example. Kasparov has his king exposed, an open file right in front of his king. So here he doesn't even notice. He thought and said, hold on. Theory says I should protect my king here and take on d5 later if possible. Now, Karpov didn't allow it. He played bishop f3 and defended the pawn. Kasparov already expected that, so he played it Zanato. The compensation for this pawn now comes in a surprising way. Kasparov plays bishop f5. He's putting a knight on d3, but it's unclear if this worked. Kasparov argues that with a knight on an advanced post, he will have enough compensation for being down material. It's an idea, yes, completely innovative. Now let's see how it goes. He continued, saying Karpov played technically and developed a piece. Kasparov replied with bishop. g5, rook to e8, placing it on the e-file. Queen to d2 connects the rooks, all within opening theory. Here, Kasparov has played the move b5, which brings the idea of controlling the c4 square. So this knight can't return to the game or activate this piece in any way. And now, Karpov starts to centralize the rooks. Here, Kasparov has played the move knight to d3, look at that, puts the knight on an advanced post. And here we already have the first tactical dilemma. He threatens a fork. It's scary, isn't it? And defending isn't easy. If you play knight to c2, I'll simply take the b2 pawn and recover material. So here, Karpov got out of the fork with the move knight to b1, and now Kasparov questions this bishop that's pinning his knight on f6. And look, here's what happens from here. Karpov keeps the pin theme, and now b4 knight to a4 and bishop to d6. This is important, as Kasparov is watching h2 for possible sacrifices. The bishop on h4 is undefended with the knight on g4. Karpov, a technical and prophylactic player, defended against all of this. With the bishop on g3, and here is where Kasparov will finish his development. With rook to c8, he brought in the last piece. This is where the match's magic begins. At this moment, Karpov plays b3, making his idea obvious. For many, maybe even in tears, because he's preparing the move knight to b2. And basically, what he wants is to remove the knight from the advanced post. If black loses the knight on d3, you'll be in a much worse position with no compensation for the pawn you sacrificed. How is Kasparov going to defend against this? And what about knight to b2 coming in aggressively? Kasparov countered knight to b2 here. With the move g5, oh, Ravel, what nonsense. g5. How can g5 defend against knight to b2? I said it's a top-level match, something unbelievable. Karpov played bishop takes d6 here. Raphael chess? Why? Why not knight b2? Because Kasparov had the idea of g5 queen takes on b2 and now plays g4. Look, that's unbelievable. The bishop only has one move. There's no e4, it must return to e2. And now you lose a piece with the extraordinary rook to c8, which only works because of the g5, g4 that Kasparov prepared. It's a completely scary line. Now Karpov saw it, so he defended. He needs to free his bishop. So he captures on d6 to remove the dark squared bishop blocking the g-pawn. But why? To play g3, and now, again, Karpov prepares knight to b2. Arguing that against the line we just saw, he's not going to bring the bishop back to e2. When you play g4 here, he'll put the bishop on g2, opened up that square, and now prepared knight to b2. How does Kasparov defend? And he goes g3. And now he's going to play bishop to g3, and now he plays bishop to g3. And now he plays bishop to g3. Now he plays bishop to g3. And now he's going to play g3, bishop to g3, the bishop on g3. And now he's about to play bishop to g3, then g3. Now he's going to play the bishop. Subtitles, Adriana Zanotto. Subtitles, Adriana Zanotto. And if you put the queen on the e-file, it causes problems. For example, queen to e3, you get hit with that check and lose the queen. A scandal? This is a terrible scandal, unbelievable. The extremely high level, knight to d7 Karpov saw it here, so he played bishop to g2, preparing again the idea of knight to b2. Why? Earlier, the issue was the loose bishop on f3, but that's no longer the case. So, now what? Kasparov defended directly against knight to b2. It's an important moment because Karpov realized he can't make that move and he tries another idea. He plays move a3 saying, look, I'll give up this pawn here to try to bring my pieces into the game, because basically, with the pawn on b4, neither of the knights can play it. There are no available squares, so he played this a3 to bring the knight to c3, but Kasparov didn't allow it. He played a5, and after the exchange, keeps the same problem for white. This is a very important moment in the game, because basically here, Karpov realizes that he's in Zug. But, Raphael, what is that? There isn't any useful move for white in this unbelievable position. With all pieces on the board, Karpov then was like Carlsen is today. So he's being completely destroyed. And the worst part in chess, positionally here, which is the strongest part of Karpov's game. You know, in this position, the queen doesn't have any squares to move to. She's completely blocked. The rooks can't play because the knight is a monster controlling everything. You can only pass the turn here, move your bishop, king, or possibly a pawn. Now Karpov saw here that the queen still has one square left, the a2 square. He put the queen there, basically passed the turn, put the queen on a2, the only square the queen had available. Kasparov is steadily improving his position. See, he moves his bishop. g6 gives more mobility to the queen on the f-file. Now, Karpov tries an emergency measure, giving back this pawn to try to activate his pieces somehow. Why is there no move here? This is a nightmare. But Kasparov didn't take that pawn. He played g4, ignoring the counterplay that Karpov was aiming for. Because if you take here, Karpov's idea is to play knight to d2 and become active. If you play rook to e2 to pin the knight, Karpov claims the queen is misplaced. So he plays knight to c4 to attack it. And after that exchange, Karpov managed to activate his piece, the knight. It used to be stuck on b1, but now it's on d6, active and controlling c4. And the white pieces get the counterplay they want, right? So Kasparov ignored this pawn here on d6 and played the move g4, keeps taking some squares and gaining space. Karpov still has no move here. Here he brings the queen back to d2 Toto on this king's pawn g7 holding e. It's a very dramatic moment in the game. Why? Kasparov can push the h-pawn, open the file, and launch an attack. So here Karpov finds himself in a situation where he can't just sit back and watch Kasparov play. After the queen move, he plays f3 to try to create counterplay and open the file. At the same time, this move greatly weakens this diagonal. And now, Kasparov is going to try to convert all this advantage he has built up. He sees it's the right time to recover the d6 pawn since he'll regain it with interest. Karpov took on g4, then queen, d4 king h1, and Kasparov moved the knight to f6. The moment is dramatic. Knight to g4 is coming, creating forks everywhere and also threatening f2 in many lines. The position is truly desperate. Karpov plays rook to f4 as a tactical move, since taking with the knight would lose the queen. But here Kasparov unleashes a devastating move with knight to e4. This move is devastating because it attacks the queen, and basically, white doesn't have any good moves here. Anything will cause problems. Karpov at this moment took on d3, okay? But notice that first, if you just pass your turn here, play a move like h3, I take your queen, you take mine. But at the end, there's a fork left and you lose the rook on d1, which causes problems. Another seemingly normal idea is to take on e4, but then I recapture. It's nearly checkmate. There's nothing you can do. You'll have to give up the rook. Black's material advantage is huge, besides having active pieces. And another option that might seem logical is just to defend the queen. But in this line, you immediately lose a rook, which is hanging there on d1, so whatever move you make, you lose here. So, Karpov took on d3, and now Kasparov is going to finish this game with the move knight to f2. And look who's coming in, the bishop right in the queen's face. In this position, there's no way to refuse this knight that just came in here. So Karpov took it, and now he lost the queen. And basically, from here, the game was already over. White is completely lost here. Karpov, it was a destruction, a prepared line, scary, full of completely unbelievable ideas. In this game now, Karpov still played a few more moves. Look there, he tried this one. Kasparov now brought in the rook. Tactics are everywhere. If you take here, I capture your rook and then recover on e3, winning all the material. So he played knight b2, and Kasparov clinched the game with the move rook e1. In this position, Karpov resigned this game, because there's no way to defend anymore. However, you'll have to play this capture and checkmate. Game over. One of the best games in the history of the World Championships. Now let's check this battle's accuracy. Kasparov reached nearly 97% accuracy. It's clear. He played against a shocking, terrible machine. Now Stockfish makes a brilliant move, rook to c8 there at the very end, converting the advantage. Now, we had much more surprising moves during this match. There it is. Who will be the greatest of all time, huh? Many think it's Carlsen, others say it's Kasparov, Bobby Fischer, but yes, these players play in a spectacular and insane way. Comment down below for you who is the greatest of all time. And this video was inspired by a YouTube channel, a Spanish channel called Aradrez with Concepto. That's when we decided to offer this content in Portuguese too. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a big like down below and see you in the next videos.